This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Gunworks. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Gunworks, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Well, good afternoon, Caleb. It's so awesome to see you, man. It's awesome to connect kind of outside of Sheep Week. That's kind of where we end up running into each other, but it's sure nice to have a chat and have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, Kyle, you too. Good to see you. I sure appreciate you having me on. And we was talking there a minute before, but I just want to say congratulations on board of directors now. Seen that yesterday and excited to meet all the newcomers on there. So congratulations on that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be fun. There's a really good group, and there's 4 new directors too, which is, usually it's 3 or something like that. So it's a pretty big changeover this year. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and it's just a good group of people, and our Wild Sheep family is pretty special, obviously. So
yeah, they've been great to me. So I've had a lot of fun working with in the last couple of years.
Well, that's awesome. So Caleb, for our listeners, obviously Caleb Dorenkamp, and anyone that's been to any, lots of rodeos, obviously, and anybody that's been to Sheep Week or down at SCI and a lot of these big auctions, that they're obviously going to recognize you. You do a ton of work and kind of the voice of the auction. So really cool to dig into that and figure out what that's all about. And one of the things that really intrigued me is I seen a social media post of yours a couple of months ago or 6 weeks ago or whatever it was, and you had a real cool encounter with your bow in the backcountry, and really want to dive into that a little bit today, but just kind of touch on all this stuff: conservation, auction, rodeo, hunting, everything. So
yep, for sure. And know what happened a month ago during the whitetail rut. A lot of crazy stuff. You can see hunting as much as we get to, but that's kind of a once in a lifetime deal. I don't think that'll ever happen again. So excited to share that story as much as I can. And I knew putting it out there for Facebook to see, and luckily self-filming it captured it to at least have some people believe it anyways.
Well, I tell you, man, that is a story, and I'm going to dive into it right away, but I want to talk a little bit about who you are first so our guests can get a frame of reference there. But yeah, that is a once in a lifetime. And then the self-film, archery, there's 17 factors in there that one of them on their own is pretty incredible, but you all of them to come together and sort of how the outcome it did. And it's true testament to the conservation aspect of what we do too. The character you showed and the story you told in your Facebook post there, it was super cool, man. So Caleb, let's jump right into it. First of all, let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and your upbringing, how you got into the hunting world, conservation, and then the auctioneering part of it and the emceeing part of it too, please.
Yeah, well, born and raised in a small town in southeastern Colorado, and anyone who's familiar in the hunting world, it's actually little town, but a big place to be from when it comes to big mules. But really, my family background was mainly in rodeo. I'm about the third. We're award-winning stock contractors, and so rodeo world, that for those of you, that means they provided the livestock for rodeos and sent them to some of the biggest rodeos across the country. Had bareback horse of the year. Took several animals to the Wrangler National Finals rodeo in Las Vegas, and actually ended up receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, the PRCA. And from that went down to my uncles and my dad. They were all big into the steer railing side of things. I had an uncle go 3 times to the NFR. My dad was in top 30 of the world standings. And so most of my family was in the ranching and the rodeo world. And growing up in a ranching and farming rural community, riding horses and all that played a big factor when you wasn't in school or sports. But the hunting game just kind of took off for me. My dad and a couple uncles were one of the first ones in my family to to start hunting outside of just a couple times, as a hobby once or twice a year, like my grandparents did. They were more focused on the rodeo side. And so fortunately enough, I had a dad that would always take me hunting with him from a young age. I was probably, riding along in the pickup with him, looking at mule deer when I was 2 or 3 years old. And I took a liking to it. And yeah, so that kind of turned me on to the hunting side. And then going through high school, I've always wanted to be in the hunting industry. A lifelong goal in the end would be to host or have my own hunting show at some point along the career, and which that's down the road long ways for right now. But got into hunting big time, and when I was 17, I'd been in the rodeo world. I never steer wrestled like my dad, my brother, and uncles and all them. And when I was 17, actually, in the little town where I went to high school, they was kind of having their festival days somewhat during the summer. And there is actually in Grenada, Colorado, one of the few Japanese internment camps. And it's actually now, I think they just made it, I know, as a National Historic Site, maybe just made it a national park. It's a very small town, but that's what it's well known for, is that Japanese internment camp. And so there was an arena up there, and it kind of was somewhat a community building. And during the festival days, there was a ranch bronc riding put on by my grandparents and my uncle, who's also a stock contractor. And they asked if I would like to try announcing the bronc riding. And so I had team roped and rode horses all my life, but never competed very much in the rodeo game. And so I went ahead and tried it and gave it a go. And I actually ended up liking it, and got a few compliments. So my family, being in the rodeo world as long as they had been, told me I should give it a try to look into it. And they had a family friend, and I'd only met him once when I was maybe 6 or 7. He come down there for a mule deer foundation to auctioneer, and his name is Les Olhauser. And so he has been announcing and auctioneering for, I know he's going to yell at me for giving his age here, but for a little over 30 years. So actually when he got into rodeo announcing, my grandparents were stock contractors and hired him for one of his first announcing jobs. And so he actually still has a rodeo. He lives in Washington now, but he still has a rodeo about an hour away from where I grew up in Southeast Colorado that he's done for, like I said, over 30 years. And if he had any advice, and he invited me to come up and kind of shadow him at that rodeo and let me have some mic time. And that was in September. And the following March, I booked my first rodeo on my own. And so that's kind of how the announcing game got going as far as in the rodeo world for me. And then, and Les was super helpful in that, helped kickstart my career in rodeo announcing. And then along the line here a couple years ago, because me and Les really clicked, not only for the love of rodeo, but for the hunting game, as much as involved as Les has been. You guys, especially through Safari Club International, Wild Sheep Foundation, he's worked with so many organizations in the conservation side as an auctioneer, and he's really well known there. And he knew I had a love for hunting. And so a couple years ago, the Sheep Foundation was getting ready to go again. And I believe this was in September. He contacted me about, we'd worked quite a few rodeos together and got to know each other well. And he contacted me about possibly being a bid spotter. And we agreed possibly that. And then it was actually a funny deal. I remember it was early October, about a couple weeks later. I was helping my dad hunt antelope. And we're on a stalk, and it has just not been going good. It was one of them days. I mean, every time the wind swirled, and they had been about a week of hard pressure, and we was watching the last buck of the night run over a hill about 500 yards away, and it was kind of one of those just kick the dirt all the way back to the pickup, and felt the phone vibrating and looked, and it was Les Olhauser, and he contacted me and said I'd like to put your name in to possibly MC the Wild Sheep Foundation auctions at Sheep Show. And so kind of an opportunity to come out in the middle of a pasture in southeast Colorado.
It's awesome.
Kind of down in luck, and that happened, and it's kind of been go from there. So,
well, that's super cool. Okay, so you started off with the rodeo when you're 17, your grandparents' rodeo, and I'm guessing there wasn't quite as many people there. Now, of course, Sheep Week, we know there's a couple thousand. I'm sure you've done rodeos with thousands of guests and stuff. How's that experience been? Do you still get worked up? Do you still get nervous? Or I know like I look at you guys, you do so many of them. I kind of wonder if it's almost like just going to work, another day at work, or do you get really amped up when you're going up on stage?
I used to get really nervous, and with rodeos, it's a bit different compared to like Sheep Show, because a lot of the times you're in an announcer's stand, away from everyone. So you're not looking right out onto them like you would the stage in Reno at Sheep Show. But, I used to get pretty nervous. And honestly, at Sheep Show, the first year I was there, the first night, we're standing there getting ready to go on and getting ready to walk on the stage, and they introduced us, and I've just found out the best way, like I found out there that night, is to tell yourself it's happening, whether you want it or not. So there's no sense of being nervous about it. And so I still get a little nervous, just, the lights and the crowd, and being from a small farming ranch town, to get to be out in front of all those people, dang sure gets the energy worked up. But now it's more the production of things is what I worry about now, as I've gone through it, making sure I'm on my A game and we cover everything and production goes good, whether it's a rodeo or an auction. Time is everything, and keeping things rolling and going good.
It's always amazed me, and Les is just he's a legend, as you know, right? And just to watch Les, and the thing that he knows something about everything. Like you're just like, how the hell does this guy know something about like stuff that you just, and it's so natural, and it's phenomenal to watch. And the thing for me, like I haven't seen you guys down at SCI, but I watch you at Sheep Show and the team there. It's a team effort, and it truly is, and it's just so amazing to watch all the dynamics and all of you working so closely together. And when somebody needs a break, the other guy, and it's seamless. It's just, you guys are a phenomenal team. But Les, he's done it for so long. It blows me away, the stuff that comes out of his mouth. I'm like, how could he possibly know that?
Oh yeah, for sure. And you think in the hunting world he knows things. You start talking about the bloodlines and genetics when it comes to bucking horses and bucking bulls. They're them guys. He knows the great grandparents of the bucking stock, and the bloodlines, and he can start telling you some of that stuff. And pretty soon you're like, I don't know how you know this or how you remembered all this, but yeah, he's just a walking encyclopedia for all kinds of history on so many different topics, and from his service in the Army, pretty soon you're sitting at a restaurant and he starts telling you what wine is which, because he took cooking classes in Germany, and it's just like, do you know everything about everything? He can back it up 100%. And no, I cannot thank Les Olhauser enough. He is literally, designed my career, kick-started it both in announcing and now fortunate enough getting to work in the hunting and conservation industry. So he has been great to me.
I've noticed that, actually. I've noticed that about Les with you. I feel like he's been in your corner a lot. But that said, it's interesting. I was kind of reflecting. I was thinking about this last night about you specifically, Caleb, and like, you're gifted, clearly, right? You have a special skill. Your voice and what you do, and you were, whether or not you had Les, you were going to find yourself on that stage one way or another, because it's a bit of a calling, in my opinion. But you can see that, like, I feel like, I look at Les and almost like I look at you as almost his son. He shepherds you. He watches out for you. I watch both you guys on social media and even at the shows. That you can see there's that he's definitely a fatherly figure looking out for you. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yes, yep, for sure. And it's super cool for me to be a part of that, because starting out in his career along this path, like I was talking about earlier, was with my grandparents, so many years ago at those rodeos. So it's really cool for me, in which now my granddad's gone, my grandma is still alive, but she really enjoys watching, all of this take place, how it started out over 30 years ago in Crawford, Nebraska at a rodeo, to now I'm getting the opportunity to go work with him and in these amazing places, like Reno at Sheep Show. And it's funny how things work out like that.
Yeah, very cool. When you look at, I guess probably when you're 16, did you have aspirations of any of this? Did you ever see yourself at Sheep Week or at the rodeos, being the announcer, the MC? Was that ever something you thought about, or it just kind of something that evolved and just came about?
Honestly, no. I never saw it going down this path. Like I said, I'd always had the dream of having a hunting show or working in the hunting industry somehow, some way, and still, was at that age, and still throughout high school was unsure of exactly what I wanted to go into. And my parents had told me for a long time not to waste my voice, and I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to play into life, really. And it never in a million years would I thought I would have started out rodeo announcing, and then it would have led to this. And so, no, honestly, didn't expect it to take that turn. And fortunately enough for me, like I said, with Les putting my name in that and the Wild Sheep Foundation giving me an opportunity like that to MC the auction at Sheep Show. I think this will be my third year there, coming up this January. They were one of the first auctions I got to MC and speak at, and fortunately enough, they liked it, and so did several others, and so it's led to several more auctions, both national and chapter auctions, mainly with Wild Sheep Foundation and SCI. So no, unexpectedly, and life just kind of takes those turns for you. You wasn't expecting to see it coming.
Super cool. Now, when you look at that, where you're at now, so, okay, you've been doing this for a few years. Are there any aspirations? So, like, you're kind of on the big stage, like, in my opinion, SCI, Sheep Show, like that, in terms of the outdoor conservation gig, to me, that's the top of the food chain. I'm biased, of course, but, I think that those are two fantastic organizations. On the rodeo front, is there, do you have any aspirations or goals that you care to share with us that you've thought about in terms of any of that stuff?
Yeah, when it comes to the rodeo side, here last year I was approved for my pro card in the PRCA, the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. So that's talking like the rodeo association that sanctions like the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo that just got over. So when you're seeing those big rodeos on TV, all of those are mainly with the PRCA. So gaining that pro card hopefully opens a lot of doors on that avenue of work for me. I'd like to continue to gain more pro rodeos. Hopefully one day have a chance to announce the NFR and carry it somewhat, have an opportunity to maybe turn it into more with broadcasting on that side of things in Western sports or with the hunting industry. And when it comes to these auctions, like I said, my family's always been in the rodeo industry. And that is, what they love to do as a lifestyle. And it's been a big part of my life, and I'm very passionate about it as well. But with the hunting side, going to these events and emceeing these auctions and these banquets, that has kind of been my true passion with the speaking work. And so yeah, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have some of the biggest auctions and organization events on the conservation side, and hopefully just have the opportunity to keep working with them and continue to grow more in the hunting industry with public speaking and channels like that working through there. So that's the plan right now. But like I said, it's just kind of, stuff continues to change through life, and hopefully it goes for a positive and keeps growing.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about like development. Like obviously you did the first rodeo when you were 17, and then you obviously had some mentorship over the years, and Les has been an influence there. Is there, and obviously on the auctioneer side, those guys, I'm sure a lot of those guys went to auctioneer school or done several courses over the years. But on the MC side, I can't imagine that there's a sheep show or like uh, a conservation tutorial that it must be more mentorship, that sort of stuff. But talk a little bit about the conservation side of things, and then on the rodeo side of things. Is there somewhere you can go to get training, or is it a lot of mentorship and self-study and that sort of stuff? And I think a lot of people think, and I'd like to get your perspective on this. A lot of times, like I've done some speaking and emceeing and stuff, and people think, oh, you're just naturally good, right? That guy's a good speaker. But I think the best speakers, and I'm certainly not including myself in that, but the best speakers spend a lot of time perfecting their craft. They don't, and they're probably naturally good speakers as well, but they put a lot of effort into getting there. It's not just by coincidence. It was a lot of hard work. So touch a little bit on that for the rodeo side, and also on the conservation work you do.
Yeah, well, starting out with the conservation side, going into it, I grew up my whole life going to rodeos. So when I started announcing, I somewhat had an idea what an announcer should sound like, and go with that, because my dad competed at some of the largest rodeos in the country. So I'd listened to a lot of great announcers, and how to do that. And then fortunately with Les helped me along. But when it come to the MC side of things, I'd never really been to a lot of, conservation auctions, or, really just listening to an MC, an auction MC. And so, I don't necessarily know that there's a school for something like that. Obviously with public speaking, you can go into communications or something like that with college, but really with this was, reaching out to Les, who has worked with all these. And, a lot of what I found out is you got to put the effort in and the time, but, who and who will take you under their wing and really help you along has been a huge part of my career starting off. But with the emceeing part, on those auctions, a lot of work goes into that, much like a rodeo outside of Sheep Week, like he was talking about. Right now, Kim's working on the catalog, and we should have those out anytime now coming up. Everybody there at Sheep Foundation works really hard all year to put that together, the catalog that you see on the tables, the bidders and buyers see at the tables with the descriptions of the hunt. And so here anytime I'll get those, and then it's kind of go time from there till sheep show starts, of going through each and every one of those items and highlighting the key notes throughout the description. Like I touched on earlier, with production, and time is everything of these events. So you're trying to keep them rolling smooth, but these donors we work with and everything, they've donated and given so much with these items and hunts and jewelry and everything you're working with, that you want to be sure to hit those really high notes for someone who's out in the audience and ready to buy, but didn't look at the full description, or doesn't have a book. And so they know exactly what we're on. And so what I do is I'll get the book here coming up, go through and say it's a hunt, you're going to hit on your main topics, your outfitter, what species, what weapon, the season dates and where you're going. And, maybe a highlighted note if it's something cool, that makes it interesting, that might perk somebody's interest on these bigger, say the governor's tag and some of those really, really prestigious permits we sell. During the day at Sheep Week, try to get with somebody that's kind of with the game and fish for that state, see if there was a trophy animal harvested the year before that made it more prestigious coming this year. and see what else they would like to have you add to that. So it's just a lot of going through the book and getting familiar. And then, of course, the enunciation, especially when you get into these auctions, you're working with so many outfitters from all over the world. And so sometimes you get those from France or Africa and all over the world. I get a lot of enunciations, get the questions wrote down and call Les or contact somebody while we're out there to get them figured out. And I'm by far not 100% on them. Sometimes, I'll hear a chuckle from the crowd and you just got to laugh it off and go on. And it goes right into rodeoing. And I will say that with announcing rodeos, that helped me understand how to do homework for these auctions a lot better. It's a little different, when you go into a rodeo, you get the entries, who's going to be in what event coming up. You get those a week or two in advance. And a lot of announcers will take those entries. And if you're part of a rodeo association, say the PRCA, you can have that contestant's name and then go on to the website and find that contestant's name where they've participated at, their winnings, what livestock they won on, what finals they've been to, that sort of thing. And then you get that information, and then that gives you something to talk about. Now, are you going to get the opportunity to talk about it all because you're rolling through and you're trying to get those productions as fast as possible? Probably not. But, if a guy's having trouble in a shoot or something, or you got to carry on, it's not for me, it's not been quite the skill of public speaking, but the work I put into beforehand that has really carried over and I feel like made me more confident on stage or at a rodeo because you have something to talk about, other than, hey, the concession stand is open and you're just trying to find, so you're reaching for something. And which sometimes you do, you've done the homework, you've done all the work you can, and all of a sudden they're still not out yet. And you're reaching for something. And the auctioneer side with emceeing is a little tricky because you're trying to, like I said, give enough credit for those items and the high notes and make the donor feel special and appreciated. And you're also trying to give your auctioneer a little bit of relaxed time between items, catch his breath and be ready. But then, like I said, trying to move through the night, with production and just, it's dang sure learned a lot throughout every event, and what I liked, what I done in prep work and what I didn't like to fix for the next one. And so I still have a lot of learning to do, and I dang sure study less and a lot of other people and mentors that have helped me out. And so still not saying I'm an expert on it. Still got a lot of learning to come.
I got a bunch of questions for you. I probably won't get through them all, but when you're doing an auction and let's say things go good and you get that constructive feedback, or maybe things go bad, you do something and they does Les or the other auctioneers pull you aside and say, hey, next time, do you get constructive feedback when you're up there or after the show or something like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something I cannot thank those people enough that I've got to work with. Not only like Gray Thornton, Glenn Landris, Kim Neaters, all those people of the Sheep Foundation that talked to me about what I needed to do better, but also the main three that I'm working with on stage, in Sheep Show, particularly with Les, John Bear, Keith Dinwoody. They've taken the time to talk to me just about a few things that would help. Never harsh criticize or nothing like that, just constructive criticism that they give their advice to me, but them, and especially with Les just over my full career, is always supportive of my own style as well. Not trying to make a copycat of me and saying this is how it's going to be done. They've liked my style, but just, hey, let's shorten this up a little bit or bring this in, and just been super helpful. And like I said, I just turned 23 yesterday, so I'm not an expert on the world or speaking at all yet. Got a lot of learning to do, but always open to suggestions and fortunately enough, some great mentors that like helping me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, belated happy birthday, first of all, Caleb. So, and
Well,
then I want
thank
to
you.
also want to say that I sure enjoy the work that you do. I really think like you're certainly wise beyond your years without question. You do a phenomenal job. It's always a pleasure, and yeah, and I really enjoy your style. So yeah, hopefully you get all the good feedback, but don't change who you are because you do an amazing job. So we're really grateful for it. Is there any auction that stands out for you? And the one thing that I know, I've talked to John before, and he said he gave a number on the auctions. The amount he's auctioned off over the years. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. Clearly, is there one that stands out, or anything that you were up there and that you announced and you just kind of blew your mind away? Some of these auctions just go at such high prices, or maybe some that you were like, oh wow, that was pretty disappointing. Any that stand out in your mind?
To be honest, this past year at Sheep Show, I believe you was there, and anyone that was there that night when we went for the Colorado and New Mexico governor's bighorn tags for 600,000 each. Especially being from Colorado, seeing where I'm originally from, home state, watching a tag like that, and I believe we'd sold it for 320,000 the year before, and that was my first year at Sheep Show. So to see these tags going for like that much at my first one was crazy, and then to look at the record break by nearly 300,000 the following year. And I believe it was that same night, and this will be one of the most memorable, was the Marco Polo Society 100th spot we auctioned off. And there had been talk about it. We talked a lot before the event on what we think, and I went through and with the Marco Polo spot, it's a minimum, I believe, of 100,000 to be a member in the Marco Polo
Correct,
Society,
yeah.
and auction off that 100th spot. I went through the description on my side, and I believe Les was auctioneering, and gosh, it had to be up to roughly 125, 130,000, and it was going, and somebody from the Sheep Foundation come up, and at that point, while they're auctioneering, a lot of times I may be looking ahead to the next item, just familiarizing myself with what's coming up, looking at my notes, or trying to help catch bids with the bid spotters just in case something crazy happens that they're looking somewhere, and if I can help them out. But somebody come up on stage and nudged me on the shoulder and handed me a folded piece of paper, and it caught me off guard. And they said, be sure to thank these 10 names when it's won. And they walked off, and honestly, for my age, my hearing is not the best. So usually during a rodeo and event, so much background noise is going on. And especially in the announcer's booth, I have some people get frustrated. And I'll apologize to them because they'll try saying something, so much background noise going on, I'm trying to understand what they're telling me. And I was like, I think I understood him right. And I opened that up, and I seen 10 names. And about that time, a bid spotter yelled one. And Les was a little bit confused too, because he halfway stopped the auction. He said, we've already been at 100,000. We're up to, and they said, no, 1 million. And all those people had put in 100,000. And then it dawned on me what I was holding was the names of those buyers. Several of them were already members of the Marco Polo Society. And to just be a part of that, coming from a high school, I think there was 9 kids in my graduating class, to now I'm getting to thank these 10 people for putting together $1 million in Reno, Nevada, at one of the largest conservation organization events in the world. That's just something pretty special that I got to be a part of.
Yeah, what a night. I think, there were 60 auction items or just shy of it, and raised over $6 million. Every item averaged over $100,000 on an auction. It's phenomenal. Insane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I will say this, it wasn't necessarily in the auction, but Saturday morning of the Sheep Show is a life members breakfast, I believe they call it. And there's usually a smaller auction held there, but we was waiting to go on, and they was doing I believe it was a raffle for a desert bighorn. And so we're standing around there, and 8-9 o'clock in the morning. So everybody's just waiting there, and they're doing some opening presentations. But Gray was up there drawing for this desert bighorn hunt. I'm pretty sure it's desert bighorn, and you had to be present to win. And he draws the name, and they call it, and the room's just quiet. Nobody stands up to win it. So they draw again, and it was literally like off of a movie. I'm pretty sure I heard a baby crying in the room. Like, that was the only noise. And I'm sitting there like, the two people have just won the hunt of a lifetime, and they're not here. And the third time, the third name he drew, a gentleman stood up and come up. And I don't know that gentleman personally or the full story, but I believe he had been battling cancer pretty severe and had a long road before a sheep show, and had been a supporter for a lot of years. And it sounded like it had been a tough go for him there lately. And to be the third name drawn for two people, who for some reason wasn't there that morning, just to see those kind of things, it's like everything happens for a reason kind of deal. And so that's always been a cool story that I like to share from some of these events.
That's a good one. That was Reg Collingwood, and I think Reg is a former outfitter and sold his outfit, and he's been ill, and then he won that hunt. So a great human being, Reg. So everyone was pretty excited for him, and so very cool. Yeah, cool story for sure. So Caleb, if you don't mind, I'd like to just dig back. Interest of full disclosure here, I grew up in a small town and a small farm actually in southeastern Alberta, cattle and farming. My dad had a couple sections of farmland and ran about 150 head of cows, and grew up on the farm and hunting too. Like, it's interesting. You described your formative years that sound similar to mine in many ways. I didn't rodeo personally, and my family wasn't into rodeo. We had obviously horses and stuff like that, but a lot of our family friends were rodeos and were Canadian finalist winners and stuff like that. But anyway, so your story resonates with me, and it's really cool because I grew up just humble beginnings for us, and small town, and my high school. I was junior high. There were 3 kids in my grade. In grade 7, 8, 9, there were 3 of us there, so I can kind of relate in some capacity. So how big was that on sort of influencing you? And I guess for me, it was really influential on the hunting side of things. And maybe just talk a little bit about that upbringing and growing up, and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed being from a small community. And, looking back, I think being from somewhere like that helped me with my communication skills, because literally every store you go into or wherever, you're seeing somebody So it's not like you're never talking to someone or never not talking to someone, the neighbor. And the farming and ranching side, working for a rancher through high school, and up through when I got my associate's degree right out of high school, was actually someone that I've hunted on since I was real little, from starting out, working my way up from calling coyotes on a deer, and actually is where the bucks coming up in the story we're fighting at was with my old boss on his land. So no, it was really great growing up in a community like that where everyone knows everybody. Fortunately enough, being at my age, you're wanting to get out of a smaller town. And fortunately, I get to live in that rural community now, but with what I get to do, I get to go to these bigger cities and get around more stuff that's going on. Sometimes, as most people know, if you're from a small town, it's just like, is there anything going on? And then you're gone in a big city for a week or two, and you just want to drive back roads and look at deer for a little bit. But no, the hunting, especially in eastern Colorado, was phenomenal. Especially when it comes to big whitetail, big mule deer. We're on the plains of Colorado down there. It's the Arkansas River runs through there, and it's a mixture of pasture land, grassland, sagebrush. You get about an hour or two south and west, you get into more of the canyons and cedars. And we're also getting a healthy number and population of elk moving in now on what's known as the plains elk tag when you hunt those. But coyote calling has always been a big part, one of my favorite things to do, and that was great there. And from antelope and just about whatever you wanted as far as western big game goes, especially right there, was really great. And like I said, my dad always made sure to take us as much as he could with him hunting, and we've coming from the rodeo family, always had horses, so the elk hunting was usually packing in up into a wilderness area up in the mountains of Colorado for the most part, and got to pack some great bulls out of there, taking some good bulls up there, and yeah, just the small town rural ranch farm and hunting life has been great for me. And like I said, it helped the communication skills, especially from knocking on doors and talking to the landowners about asking to hunt when you was 12 years old. Dad used to make us go up and ask, and so it makes it easier just to talk to people now, I feel like.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you think back, like you said, you love the coyote hunting. Is that like what stands out? What's your well, actually more so, do you have an apex hunt that you'd like to do? Is there something that you want to go hunt, or are you happy with what you've been doing? Is there something that's on your mind that you'd like to go and try?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of bucket list hunts. Of course, a caribou hunt has always been big on Dad and I's list. I would like to do a caribou hunt with him and my brother at some point in the future. And if we're talking just kind of Colorado or right here around home, I'd like to get a lion at some point, mountain lion. I see you got one there, and so I've got a black bear, but I'd like to get a mountain lion at some point. And I've been real big into predator calling and predator hunting, and so I really enjoy chasing those. And then from there, of course, the idea of Africa or getting the opportunity to moose or grizzly is always top of the list. But caribou and a mountain lion right now are what I'm focused on in the years to come.
Yeah, those are pretty epic hunts. So either one of them, super cool, man. Okay, so you had this insane experience, and you said a month ago in November in the middle of the whitetail rut. Paint that picture for us. I want to hear the whole story, and let's do the assumption that nobody knows anything about this hunt. So I want to hear about what you're doing, how you came across this whole experience, and then sort of just live it through your eyes.
Yeah, like I was talking about, the mule deer are what draws a lot of people to the eastern Colorado plains, but the whitetail that are down there is kind of somewhat of a hidden gem. They're getting more well known, with the Arkansas River there. I've always been a fan of hunting those offshoot creek bottoms of the river. Have always been great to me, and I've taken a lot of great bucks with a rifle, but have been getting more into bow hunting, and so put a plan together. Had a bow tag this year, and being up in Nebraska now, getting home and running around with all these events. The rodeo season was winding down, so got the opportunity, and my goal going in was I wanted to take a whitetail out of a tree stand with a bow. And I know a lot of people have done that, but that was just kind of the goal going in. And so these couple of landowners that I've hunted on for years up these two creek bottoms have been two abandoned tree stands forever. I mean, and so I got to talking to them, and if anyone's been to Western Kansas, there's like a ranch store, a lot of Western clothing, and it is lined with big game mounts, from caribou to muskox, mule deer to whitetail, everything. And I believe maybe the gentleman that started that store hunted all over the world. I think they're all his mounts. And so I was talking to the landowner one day, and I said, what about that tree stand up there? I was going to order one, but I said, there's a tree stand up that creek bottom there. And it wasn't where I was planning to hunt. It was going to be on the neighboring property that I also had permission on. And he told me about that guy that had owned that store in Western Kansas. And he said, he used to hunt all the time, and he owned that store. And every year he'd come hunt on me. He'd bring me a brand new pair of cowboy boots and give to me for letting him hunt. And he had passed away several years ago. And he said, it's always just set up there, up that creek. So I went up, and my buddies are building a duck blind like 100 yards from this tree stand. And I'm like, well, this ain't we're going to be right in each other's way. And I had an idea where I wanted to go hunt. And so I go up this tree stand, and I mean, just from the get-go, there's so many aspects of this hunt. It's early November, and there's ants all over this tree for some reason. And I mean, I have my uncle help me. I about fall out of the tree stand trying to get it down. And that guy's harness he had left up in that tree, and it was rotted and starting to fade. So I got the tree stand down, moved it over to the property that I was planning on hunting, got it set up, and, took that harness home, and you're like, well, thought about throwing it away. And I was like, this, from all those mounts to everything, in that guy's store, he's probably hunted a lot of years out of this. So I kept the harness, and it's tucked away now. But so from that tree stand, so I got some time to go hunt. Hunted a couple days, and one evening found some really good deer in there, and was supposed to leave the next day. But after seeing this one mature deer, I thought, well, I'll give it one more go the following morning. And so I went over there, and I'd sat in the tree for a couple hours, but right at daylight, about a mile off, I had seen two deer bodies. You could tell they was fighting, two bucks fighting way off down the creek bottom. And so, of course, 7 coyotes come by, and I got intrigued trying to kiss them over and trying to shoot a coyote with my bow, which was a complete wreck. And the night before, trying to video some hunts as a hobby, I dropped my video camera out of the tree stand, shattered it, my good camera. So I had the older camera, and I mean, from dropping things out of the tree stand, I was trying to get the hang of this. And so I climbed down out of the tree, and it's about 9:30 in the morning, and I was down. So this is where I originally grew up. So while I was down visiting, I was staying at my parents' house. So I was headed down the road, and either go straight down this road to mom and dad's house, or you take a left and you go down this dirt road, and it would take me about 500-600 yards from where these bucks were fighting at. It's out in this pasture ground right above this creek bottom. And so I pulled up on the road, and I'm talking to my buddy on the phone. I get the spot and scope out. I'm like, they are still fighting, and I have been watching them since daylight, and they are still down there. And I mean, I was planning on leaving within the hour, headed off. And fortunately, I didn't have to be gone that day or have to get anywhere certain on time, headed back up here to Nebraska. And I was like, gosh, I don't know if it's worth heading down there or not. I'll just spook. My buddy said, you might as well go try it and just see what happens. So I had a Montana decoy in front of me, and I'm easing along. And the closer I get, I can tell something is not right. Like, they are still locked up. And I get within 100 yards, and they are locked together. And I mean, they have been locked together for a while. You can tell they're still on their feet fighting. But the interesting part about this was I had permission up this whole creek bottom. I mean, over 1,000 acres. But there was one hay circle of the neighbors that come into this creek with a barbed wire fence, and there was a corner of that pivot there that had some sagebrush and some grass on it, on the neighbors, and they were literally 20 yards inside of that fence off where I could hunt, where I didn't have permission. So I walk up, and I'm still holding the decoy because I'm not sure how locked together they are, or if they know what I am, or if they've even noticed that I'm there. And I'm filming with my phone. And so about that time, I knew who had farmed that ground roughly, and I didn't have their contact information. So I'm sitting here 20 yards from both these shooter bucks, whitetail bucks. And so I call the landowner who I had permission on, through 5 or 6 different phone calls. An hour later, finally get permission to go across on these deer. And, you know, I mean, they were still going at it. And I mean, they would throw themselves down, lay there, and it's like, gosh, are they done? And then they get up and fight some more. And so then it's like, well, I've been sitting here and I dropped my backpack way down the fence line. And it's like, if you're going to do this, you've been wanting to film hunts, you try to get this on film. So I left them and went all the way back down the fence line a couple hundred yards, grabbed my backpack, got it, come back up with the camera. And I had a small tripod on this older video camera that had the legs that you can wrap around like a handle on a tree stand or something. I get it out, and the leg snapped off of what I had in the backpack. And it was just one of those deals. And I try to be a lot more professional hunting with my equipment and everything, but it just was one thing after another. And so it had just enough of a grip left on the base of those legs to get it rested on the wire of this barbed wire fence and lean it against the post. And it's not zoomed in very far. And I started out towards them, and I think I got within seven yards of them at one point. And it sounds crazy, but they were locked together so tight that you couldn't tell necessarily which one was bigger. And looking at what I could see, I could tell they was both mature deer. And they stood up and they backed out probably 15 yards from me, and we're still going at it. And I still had the decoy up in front of me just in case. And you know, I thought it through and thought, okay, let's go ahead and do this, and sent an arrow. And I mean, immediately you seen the video, the deer goes over and goes down within 30 seconds. Well, then I'm like, okay, now what? Because the other one's still standing up. And about that time, he just flings himself in the air, the buck that's still alive, and lands upside down on his back with his nose facing straight in the air. And I was like, I know I got a bone saw in that backpack. So I run it back over. I got the bone saw out of the pack, went back, and then I'm like, well, now here we go. This is where I get hooked doing this. And so I had a GoPro in my pocket of my binocular harness. So I turned it on, and this deer, luckily, it just worked out to where the one that was alive, lit with his nose facing up in the air. And I went up. The easiest way to get him apart was sawing his main beam off right above his brow tine, and got that sawed off. And still his base was actually wedged inside of the other deer's main beam, the deer I had taken. And I popped that out. And as soon as I popped it out, he jumped up, and he was wore out. He could barely go, but he still didn't like me being there. And he turned around and barely made it over the fence, and then down in the creek bottom. And then side note, kind of, I think it was about a week later, my dad actually seen that deer,
wow.
The one I'd sawed the antler off of. And so, I mean, just taking that in, I'm standing over the first deer I've taken with a bow. Like I said, I've taken a lot of whitetails with a rifle, but first one with a bow, and to have that kind of experience, and I'm sitting there, and about then the phone rings, and it's one of our bid spotters that we work with at Sheep Show, and I answered the phone. He said, I got another auction. You want to MC it? I was like, well, you're not going to believe what I'm doing right now, but we'll talk about that later. And so, yeah, to do that, and like I said, at that point, I was maybe 50 or 60 yards inside of the neighbor's property, you know, so if they had just been on the other fence, it'd have been done. But I mean, this whole deal was an hour and a half long, trying to get permission and then work it around. So it was a crazy deal, but you know, I don't know if there would have been any other way to get them apart like that. And I do know, I think, like I said, I counted 7 coyotes from the tree stand that morning. I've taken over close to 50 coyotes off of that creek bottom the last 50 years, or last couple years. So it was either exhaustion or coyotes getting them at that point. And so it was cool. 10-point whitetail with a bow, mature deer, and to save the other one's life was just a cool deal. And then to hope, you know, God, I hope they didn't move out of the frame of the camera, because nobody else is going to believe this. And so yeah, it was once in a lifetime experience for sure. I doubt it ever happens again.
Yeah, what a cool story, and it's a weird dichotomy, but you're killing one buck to save another one's life, and yeah, just so many different aspects of it, just the way it all came to, and it was. What was your sort of energy level like? So you messed around for an hour and a half trying to get permission, do like, and so. I know there's people out there that would have just shot that buck and just said, screw it. Like, I don't care about permission. I'm just doing this anyway. You dotted your I's, crossed the T's, did everything by the book, and still got it done, which kudos to you, man. That's awesome. Like, last thing you want is a wildlife violation, right? You go out and shoot this deer on someone else's land, and you're getting charged for it, even though it was, arguably the right thing to do, maybe, right? So what was your energy level like after an hour and a half of like the emotion and the energy? Like, that's just stressful, like being 7 yards from these bucks fighting like that. That in itself is insane.
Oh yeah, yeah. And actually, I grabbed a quick cell phone video when I was 7 yards from them, and you can see my bow in front of me and the deer right past it. And I mean, that bow is shaking 100 miles an hour. And you got to realize that this was pushing 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, it was roughly around the 10th of November, but it was still getting 65 degrees during the day. And I still have my heavy coat, uh, harness on from the tree, everything. And so I'm like sweating like crazy. And then you're sitting there and the energy kind of dies down because you've been staring at him for half an hour waiting on the phone to ring to get permission for this. And then to go back into it, and then the excitement pumps up. And then from taking a deer to trying to get the other one, the antler taken off and him removed safely, is just a whole nother adrenaline level in itself to be handling a live whitetail deer like that. But I was looking at the picture actually yesterday, and if you get to looking at that cap of mine I had on, is a dark green cap. I mean, I'm covered in sweat, and you can tell that cap's out from that day, and still had that coat on, and yeah, I mean, it was t-shirt weather at that point because I shedded a bunch of layers after that to quarter the deer and getting back to the pickup. But yeah, it was also one of those deals of not to let them sit there and continue to suffer, but take this in and look at, because this is never going to happen again, kind of deal. You got to just sit there and look back on it, and to have it on film was dang sure. I'm dang sure glad I took the time to set the camera up and to do that, because like I said, it's one of those deals where few people would believe you, but with a couple others, you're like, yeah, I don't know about that there's actually a late rifle season that took place after that at home. So I'm kind of curious if I completely saved that deer's life, because he's a mature deer. If I saved his life, or if someone harvested a deer with a smooth sawed off antler and wondered what was going on out there somewhere. So
Yeah, that would get people's attention. They take something like that, and they're like, they see a clean cut. They're like, what?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Um, yeah, that's phenomenal. Such a cool story. So you said do you have a YouTube channel? Did you put it up on your YouTube channel, or where can people check it out at?
It's not on YouTube yet. I got to put it
Okay.
together and edit it. But yes, we have a YouTube channel. It's kind of been just somewhat of a hobby the last couple years, but I want to turn more focus to it and get to filming a lot more hunts. And so it's called Dead Man Outdoors, and we've been working with it, trying to get it going. And I'll be the first to say I'm a lot better at talking through a microphone than I am at running a camera, especially when you drop it out of a tree stand and shatter it. But trying to just learn by trial and error, and trying to film more and more hunts, because we get to do some really cool stuff, especially when I go back home by mom and dad's, and where I grew up hunting my whole life. And so I know I've had a lot of things happen that I don't have on film that I'd really like to, but I've sure enjoyed it. And I do a lot of self filming, and I'll tell you, that adds a whole new obstacle when it comes not only having someone else film you, that's struggle enough, but when you're self filming, and especially out of a tree stand, and I've self filmed quite a few while I'm coyote calling, And running the call and a gun and a camera all at once without a coyote seeing you is almost impossible. But I've been lucky enough to make it work a couple times. So
very cool. When you got to shoot the deer, did they pause for a minute? They were broadside and you had a clean shot, or was it a bit of a tricky shot trying to get it off?
Honestly, I mean, for the story, it sounds like you're just shooting deer that's there. But no, it's actually tricky because they were fighting and they kept spinning circles and and then they'd go down, they'd knock each other down and they'd get up and go at it again. So I'm actually at full draw for not a super long time, but what felt like forever because they kept spinning and everything was quartered away or, facing at me. And then how almost like they were in a V. So you almost had one deer's body vitals in front of the other one's head. And it's like, well, I don't want to pass through and to hit the other one. And so, no, it was actually more challenging than it sounds. And then to sit there and you're like, which one's the larger deer? And finally I knew they was both mature. And finally got that broadside shot. He spun him and they stopped and took a breath. And that's when I let the arrow go. And honestly, it was almost a little embarrassing, but the deer I let go was actually a little heavier.
Is that right?
Than the one I took, yes. And that was everybody. Somebody finally on Facebook, one of the neighbors commented on there, well, did you get the bigger one of the two? And I'm like, somebody had to ask it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Just couldn't have let it go. But no, my deer was definitely mature 10-point, and anything, especially the bow, was a trophy. In my opinion, and just to have that, and to end up letting the bigger one go, at first you're a little disappointed when you walk up. You're like, you know what, this is just too cool a deal to let any disappointment come over you about the size of the animal at all. It was mainly the experience, and I'll be happy with a 10-point whitetail about any time of the day. So,
didn't you end up with 3 of 4 of the points anyway on the cutoff end?
Yes. Yep. Like I said, I sawed it off right above the brow tine, and I believe because the one I got was a 10-point, and I believe the other one was just a real nice heavy. He might have been a year older, heavy 8-point. Had a pretty long main beam on there. So yeah. So if you looked, I got the antler laying in front of that buck, and with the 3 points on it. So yeah, I got 3 antlers out of the deal. And
that's awesome. Great. Well, congratulations on that, and such a cool story, and really neat, Caleb. Okay, so I know I've taken a bunch of your time here today, and you're a busy guy. What's next on the plate? Is it Sheep Week, or you got stuff going on before that?
No, it's a Sheep Foundation. I just got done with an auction down in Texas. And before that was out in Vegas with a booth at the PRCA personnel convention, trying to book some rodeos, but then went down to San Antonio, did that auction with Trinity Oaks, and now it's getting ready for a Sheep Foundation. So what that means, and this year it's actually a little different because SCI is backed up right against Sheep Foundation. They're back to back. So So what I'm waiting on anytime, like I said, is these catalogs to come out. And then I got a lot of work to do, paperwork coming up on doing the highlight notes for every item. And so Sheep Foundation's coming up. I believe we get done there, the Saturday night auction. We'll fly out of Reno Sunday morning right into Nashville and do a chapter auction that night, and then start with National SCI that week. So going to be a busy January coming up.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to catching up with you down in Reno, and maybe we can twist Landros's arm and see if we can get up in his suite in the Peppermill there for a cocktail one of the nights, I think. But I guess you're leaving early Sunday, so we can't do too much on Saturday night.
Oh yeah, no, but it always is great to see them guys, and I will say that about all the people of the Wild Sheep Foundation. They have been so welcoming to me and just friendly, especially at my age, and putting the trust in me to do a good job, and then just being so personable and friendly and bringing me into the family. And I get to stay in touch with, like you and Glenn, just on an everyday basis, just random stuff and hunting pictures and get to work with these guys, like John Bear. I'd watched him on on coyote calling TV shows before I even met him and worked with him, and now I get to send him coyote calling pictures and talk back and forth, and so it's very similar. If you've been part of the rodeo world, I've told a lot of people this at especially at Sheep Foundation. It's very similar to the rodeo world as far as just camaraderie and working with each other, and then hanging out after the events and talking and keeping in touch. And it's one of those deals where you see each other once or twice a year, but you're together for a week, and you're longtime friends by the end of it. So I sure do thank the Sheep Foundation for being so open to bringing me in at my age, especially.
Yeah, well, you do an amazing job. We're lucky to have you. We're sure grateful for it, and lots of great work ahead of you, and really excited about what lies ahead. So appreciate you, Caleb. Appreciate your time, and can't wait to hear your voice on the mic in just over, I guess, a month's time. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's coming up. Well, no, I cannot thank you enough for having me on. I really appreciate this. It's great seeing you other than once a year. And congratulations once again on that board of director position. I'm sure you'll do a great job on there, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate that, Caleb. Thank you. And thanks for all you do. Appreciate you.